Bare necessity, but simple bare necessity. Bare necessity, but simple bare necessity.
Hey there, it's Brie and welcome to today's video. I apologize if my voice sounds a little off today. I actually have quite the sore throat the past few days, and I thought I had already filmed this video, but I did not. So I apologize if I look a little meh and I sound a little meh. It's because I'm filming this quite late at night and kind of a little sickish. Today's tea is Sunny C by David's Tea. I would drink the 911 from them, but I am out of it currently, so Sunny C it is. It would be better if I had never steeped it. Kind of lost track of time. So, let's go ahead and get into this video. We are continuing last week's topic for our troupe talk, where we talked about book turnout drama, but this time we're talking about author drama. First of all, what is author drama? Author drama is basically authors have done or said something that is offensive or deemed problematic by a group of people or a majority of people. What happens because of it oftentimes ends up being cancel culture-y. The author is frequently canceled, meaning that either people choose not to support that author by unhauling their books, or by unfriending or unfollowing people who still talk about that author's books. It can even, unfortunately, in some cases lead to harassment of a creator at times. I have seen this in the past, more so with smaller creators. With larger creators, I don't really see it. I don't see people commenting on larger creators' videos and saying, I can't believe you read a TJ Klune book or whatever. Like, I don't really see that so much as I see it on like smaller channels and like smaller creators. People feel more comfortable, I guess, critiquing a creator that they know that they can kind of shut down, which is sad, really. And going back to what we talked about last week, it depends on how you approach it. There's often a lot of discussion about these things on Twitter in particular, mostly negative or frustrated comments at or about the author. So before I move into the next section, I just do want to mention that for me personally, I understand that there are some things that authors will say or do that are not okay in general, or they are not okay for a specific group of people or person. For example, you know, if an author were to say something that was like Christian hate, that would offend me a lot, right? And like, for example, with regards to, say, Roald Dahl, I did not know that he had said some of the things that he said until Margaret kindly mentioned, like, hey, I don't know for sure if it's a specific book, but I do know that some people have said that he's made these sort of comments and da-da-da. And so then I was able to do some research and find out, and like now I know that I don't want to make any specific content towards his books. I already own them, so I'm still probably going to read some of them, but I'm not going to be sitting here like promoting go read Roald Dahl. Now, I'm not saying that either side is right or wrong in this situation. I'm just point blank saying that no matter what the situation is, this is usually the outcome. Author does something, some group of people is upset by said something, whether the author did something that was actually wrong or not is up to you to decide, and that's personal and depends on your beliefs in some cases. So occasionally it is more of a disrespect at a cultural thing. For example, with TJ Klune, it wasn't that he necessarily said something bad, it was that he pulled an entire plot and story based off of somebody else's experience that he did not have the right to just take it. What would it really take for an author to be forgiven for doing or saying something that has offended people? That's That is the question. That is quite a question, I feel like. Most people, I feel like, would say that if they've been upset by an author, that a really good apology, like a proper apology, would do it for them. Like them showing genuine remorse. Okay, so most people would probably say a sincere apology, meaning the author cannot do anything about how the people have responded to what they said or did. Because if they do that, then it doesn't seem sincere to the average person. So, if people kind of lashed out at a person because of something they said or did, if anybody like tries to correct that and be like, hey, maybe let's come at our issues with like a different approach, no, we can't do that. That comes off as you not truly being apologetic. And while I can understand it in some situations, like, I'm not saying it's necessarily always right or wrong, that viewpoint. I think that it's situational as to whether that is valid or not. That's just my perspective on it. They also must see the why behind the what, meaning why people were upset, like understanding why what they said or did was offensive to those people, which I agree with. I think that if you offend somebody, you need to like strive to understand how you upset them, because they clearly have a different way of thinking than you do, and that comes from different lifestyles, backgrounds, cultural experiences, social experiences, and more. So we all should always strive to understand why somebody is upset when we have offended them. In some cases, the only way that somebody would really be forgiven, I feel like, is just if they didn't do it intentionally. It can only be an accident, a misunderstanding, or, you know, they didn't intentionally try to hurt people or like intentionally try to say something mean to, at, or about somebody. They were just uninformed, or they didn't realize that that was a slur, for example. So that's one of the situations I feel like that in some cases can get somebody like a little bit more grace from the general population of the bookturnet. However, the downfall of the apology method of trying to apologize is that usually if the apology is not satisfactory to the average person, it will lead to more criticism and scrutiny. So if an author makes a mistake, or if an author has a different views from a group of people, especially if that's the majority of people on the bookturnet, then they're probably going to screw themselves over if they try to apologize, or if they try to explain their perspective, because some won't actually apologize and just leave it at that. They'll try to explain their perspective, which I understand. I agree that you should, you know, if you've done something that upset somebody, you should explain to them why you weren't trying to upset them and why you think the way you think. And then listen while they explain why they think the way they think. I feel like that is the type of dialogue that really needs to happen in most cases, so that both sides of a situation can understand each other. But that's not what that's never what happens here on the internet. It's always like very harsh comments, very cutting, very toxic conversations. And it's not because the people are necessarily toxic by nature, but we've become so in the way that we discuss things on the internet. Which is sad, especially when it comes to like Twitter. Twitter is it's very easy for people to make things toxic on Twitter. Because they'll just read between the lines, misunderstand, manipulate words, and put words in people's mouths, and it's a lot. So when anything dramatic happens on Twitter, it escalates really quickly. It all comes down to a few things. What are authors allowed to say from their platform, and what should they keep personal? And secondly, what are we supposed to critique in that author and what they present about themselves? What right do we have to say that their beliefs are wrong when that's just what they believe, and their lives have been different than your lives or my life? So why do we assume that we get to be critical, super overly critical, and like dictate how they act or behave or think? Now, if they're harming people, I agree. Or if they're saying things like some of the things that I saw from Roald Dahl. For me, it boils down to a couple of different things that will come into play in regards to how you would respond to author drama. The main thing is if it affects you personally or not. If it doesn't affect you personally, then who does it affect and why does it affect them? There are going to be times where an author says or does things that are offensive to a specific group of people but not others for whatever reason, and you may believe differently than that group of people. And if that's the case, then how are you going to handle that? For example, a very sensitive topic is abortion, and there are very strong beliefs in both sides of that. If you were to stand up and say you support an author or don't support an author who has vocalized at one point or another a thought in regards to that topic, then you're gonna lose subscribers or friends because you have a difference in beliefs. And I don't think that's fair, you know? Like, even if you agree or disagree with that author, like, that shouldn't decide your friendships. You should be able to still be friends even if you disagree on important topics like that. Like, I have very different beliefs from my friends in all sorts of places. I've had friends at school that I've had different, like, I was best friends with a guy who was agnostic, and it was open, comfortable conversations where we were allowed to say, well, this is why I believe what I believe. But it wasn't like I was trying to preach at him or him try to dissuade me from my faith. It wasn't like that. And it should be the same thing with all topics like this that are sensitive and very emotionally driven topics. We should be able to accept that other people are allowed to have different feelings from us, and it simply is just not that way on the internet these days. And what often ends up happening is when a person speaks up and says an author's name that has been canceled, then people feel like they have the right to hold them accountable. Or furthermore, they have the right to hold the author accountable. So I'm going to talk about accountability versus personal choice, and how I feel like cancel culture and book internet drama and author drama has kind of all come to this point of what, where does accountability come into play and where does personal choice come into play? Most people say that they have the right to hold authors and creators accountable. I think we should change this wording. Accountability is supposed to come from people that you choose, meaning that my sister is one of my people that holds me accountable in my life. My D group partner, for my discipleship, she can hold me accountable in my life. But like my coworkers, if it's about work stuff, maybe. But if it's not about work stuff, then no. You know what I mean? Like, there's a line there. Random person on the internet holding me accountable for my life choices? Not so much. But, I agree that you can choose not to support someone, and if a creator is unaware or does not mention the drama or problematic elements or give any commentary on, or at least just briefly say like, hey, I know this author is da da da. So like when I talk about a Roald Dahl book, as I'm reading them, I'm gonna mention, hey, by the way, this. I'm not just gonna leave it hanging in the air, because I think it's important to reference that and acknowledge it so that people are aware. I've got off my sentence there, but I agree that you can choose not to support someone, and if the creator isn't aware or doesn't mention it, you could ask them if they know, or direct them towards some information so they can make their own decisions regarding that author. But we shouldn't cancel creators based on canceled authors. I don't necessarily agree with all of the authors that I read from, and I think that's actually an important thing. It teaches me to understand different people. When I read from the perspective of knowing that this author believes very differently from me, I learn from that. I'm able to see things differently because I'm aware of that difference in our opinions or beliefs, and that allows me to notice things in their writing that's different from how I would have done it because of that, or things that are similar despite that. So for me, I read all sorts of authors that I don't look into their backgrounds a lot, but when I do look into authors' backgrounds, a lot of times they're very different from me in their beliefs or thoughts on certain topics, and that's okay. I think that's perfectly fine. And this topic of differing beliefs in regards to what the content of a book is will be discussed further in another Troupe Talk video later this month. So stay tuned for that. But moving on, depending on how they discuss and to deal with it, you may choose not to consume their content, but you shouldn't drag them for having different views or choosing to separate the art from the artist. That's a personal choice. I know that there are very differing polarized beliefs on should you separate the art from the artist. I think that regardless of what you think, it's not fair to tell other people what they should think on that topic. If they want to separate the art from the artist, that is their choice. That is their prerogative. And it's yours as well. You get to decide whether you want to separate it or view them together. That's up to you. Don't try to tell people how they should live their reading life. It's creativity. It's art. I agree that if there are some things that are harmful or disrespectful in the book itself, that you would want to make that clear. Comments specifically inside the book, or like views that are inside the book that are harmful or offensive in some way. But most of the time it's in regards to comments that the authors have made outside of the book. Most of the time it's to do with things that they've put on Twitter or they've said in interviews and things like that. that most of the time end up coming up. Occasionally things in books, but usually that's in older books, or like backlisted books from an author, where they probably were less informed or didn't understand that what they were doing was offensive at the time. That wasn't as, as much of a conversation even just a few years ago, like 10 years ago in the book community. It was like a completely different conversation than it is now in regards to certain elements, where people didn't know that certain things were offensive because it wasn't given a voice like it is now for people to actually discuss and have a platform to share what it is and isn't offensive to certain groups of people. So in the cases that the author's comments are not inside the book, I feel like it's not really grounds to cancel that creator that mentions them, because again, it's personal choice whether you separate art and artist. I don't think that the author's book, which oftentimes has nothing to do with the comment that they made, like, you promoting their book doesn't mean you're promoting their comment. But that's become the thing that everyone views it as, because it's this whole thing where it's like you don't want to financially support an author who you disagree with. Which is a mood that I don't know about it. And while I personally think that it's important to mention, if you're aware of drama of some kind or problematic things of some kind with an author, it's important to mention that for the people that it is important to, and maybe not do like huge dedicated videos so that you're not, turning people off of your content, because that's dumb to do like a huge dedicated video to Mackenzie Lee or something. You get the point. Yeah, my thoughts are this. Bookternet drama usually ends up mostly stemming from author drama, where an author has certain views or things that they've said or done that people think is, one thing or another. They have opinions on it. And then people discuss it in the bookternet and have differing views. I personally don't discuss a lot of the drama. I also know that there are some things that I'm not, personally affected by either, and due to what I think or believe on certain topics, I may or may not always have the same perspective on some topics as other people. And that's also true in the reverse. There are going to be some things where I'm, probably going to no longer read from certain authors if they continually, say villainize religion in their work. There are some authors that they really like to do that, and I'm probably going to be swayed further and further away from considering their work. That doesn't mean I go out and outright cancel them because they always hate on religion or faith of any kind, because they're always negative when they talk about it. As much as that bothers me personally, I don't think that I'm going to create, this big whole thing like, this author is anti-religion and anti-faith and they don't let anybody believe anything. And I'm not going to do that. And that's what other people are doing though. So should I? Is that what I'm supposed to do? Am I doing booktube wrong? Is this why I have a small channel? for me personally, I may mention that there is villainization of religion in a book when I talk about said book, especially in my reviews, but I really just do that specifically for if it's like triggering or upsetting for certain people or controversial for certain people. I put that in like my my tact section in my reviews, to just give a clear idea of what you're going into. So that way, if that is something that you want to avoid reading, you now know going into it that it's there. Because some people don't want to read that, or they don't want to read about religion at all, maybe, and so that, you know, that would be another reason for it to be a turnoff. Or maybe it's triggering because they experienced some extremist religion experience where some crazy extremist person did something totally abusive and wrong. Because that also happens in the real world, and that could also be another reason that it could be a trigger for people. So there's a lot of reasons why I put that in there, but it's not because I want people to know that I want to cancel this author, because I don't want to cancel the author. I just may not want to read any more from certain authors if I realize over 2 or 3 books that they consistently do this thing, then I'm not going to read from them anymore, because I know I don't like that thing. So I know that that's not the author for me, because that bothers me. Does that make sense? I hope I'm coming across. But like, I don't feel the need to like go out and say, oh, if you're, you know, supporting, if you're supporting Cassandra Clare, then you're wrong because she's, you know, misusing the Bible. Oh, I hate myself so much for even saying it, but it was the only way I could, like, you know, give a good example. It's a great example, actually. Imagine. I swear, I bet there's somebody out there who would actually think that way too. But you get the point, right? Like, I'm not gonna go out and like start riots or cancel her if I disagreed with her. Like, now granted, I obviously don't disagree with her. I have 2 shelves worth of Cassandra Clare books. So, at the end of the day, all I have to say to wrap this up is that let people live their lives. I understand if somebody, you know, continually refers to an author that, you know, their name is personally triggering for you. Okay, sure. But also, maybe let's not be so harsh on each other about the whole art versus artist thing, and like saying that holding up a book by a certain author means that you support the things the author said. People are not gonna know things, and even if they do know things, some people like to separate, and that's their right, and we shouldn't judge them for that, because that's their choice. It's like, I don't know, that song, the song that I don't know if it's a full song or not, but drink water and mind my business, mind my business. It's literally, that is how I feel about all the drama on the bookternet and the author drama, is I'm gonna drink water and mind my business. That's kind of how I feel about it, is like, for the most part, if somebody wanted to read a Mackenzie Lee book, you go for it. If you feel like you can read that and not be bothered by it, you go for it. I personally don't feel like I want to read that book and then talk about that book, because I would never be okay with somebody signing my book in the place that I'm supposed to sign it. So that's all I have to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I again apologize for the weird voice and look that I have going on today, but That said, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day or night, whatever time it is for you. Make sure you hit subscribe and join the Bear Scouts and the notification bell down below so that you'll be notified every time I post a new video. But most importantly, so that I can see you again very soon. Peace out, Bear Scouts.
About your worries and your stress. I mean a bare necessity. That's why a bear can rest at ease with just the bare necessities of life. Yeah, with just the bare necessities of life.
Yeah, man.